Stop trying to rebrand Nazis. They're Nazis. There's nothing that Richard Spencer can contribute to this conversation that's not coming through the lens of, again, a white supremacist, an avowed white supremacist at that. It's not like he's a secret one where it's like, we don't really know what he believes. It's like, no, it's quite apparent what he believes. Very, very obvious about that. Richard Spencer would not exist in the public space if you stopped giving him oxygen. Yes. If you stopped giving him a platform, no one would care anymore because he's disgraced and kind of irrelevant. This Nazi, this white supremacist, has been caught so many times, both on and off camera, saying the most repugnant, horrifying, racist-ass shit. You know, the anti-Semite of the highest order, racist of the highest order, fucking Charlottesville. I don't know what more you need to know that the guy fucking sucks. He's just a racist-ass Nazi. That should be the end of it. You don't need to bring him on and be like, so are you misunderstood? Are there people who have maybe misinterpreted what you have said about the Jews and maybe you know, a lot of your anti-Semitic conspiracy theories? You didn't quite mean what you said when you said them. That stuff where you were on, you know, secret recording talking about how you're going to dominate other races and that you're superior to them and all that kind of stuff. The white race, all that shit. Is it real? Is it true? How can we truly know what Richard Spencer's thinking? We better put him on a show, and let's bring him on with, who's the other guy? Big Papa Fascist. Is that like a clever name, or is it ironic? As in, he's the Big Papa who defeats the fascist, or he's the Big Papa to the fascists? So put him and Richard Spencer on a panel together and see what happens. Okay.
New articles on me. It was, you know, it feeds the ego. It was incredible. It was, you know, but also kind of terrible in some ways. I mean, you kind of, you know, you lose yourself, and I'm glad about where I am now.
How would you describe yourself then for people who don't know you?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, in the alt-right days, I thought that Trump was going to shake things up, that all of these tired, boring, dusty conservatives were going to be shoved aside because they opposed him pretty vehemently at the beginning, and he was just going to crush them all, and there was going to be a new blood entered into the system, and that we were going to start talking about things we weren't talking about. I had those dreams, and those dreams kind of crashed down to reality, and I recognized that where I was before that was where I was going to be later, which is being alternative, being independent, focusing on intellectual matters, etc. That's a better place for me.
So that's what you're all about. Do you want to do any research, Tim? Are you going to Google? No? I guess you can't, because Google's so fucking broken now. If you click on Google, it's like, hey, do you want to see the 10 ads that have paid to use Google at any given time? So Google's destroyed. It's useless. You can't use it as a search engine. But if you were to DuckDuckGo, Richard Spencer, you might find some stuff, you know, secret recordings. Here's one. Here's a secret recording. So after the death of Heather Heyer, you know, during the Charlottesville protests, of which Richard Spencer attended, you know, he was one of those Nazis, the tiki torches, the tiki torch Nazis who were walking around screaming about blood and soil and shit like that. There was this recording that he got really mad about after, I think, day 2, or maybe it was day 1.
We are coming back here like a fucking 100 times. I am so mad. I am so fucking mad at these people. They don't do this to fucking me. We're gonna fucking ritualistically humiliate them. I am coming back here every fucking weekend if I have to. Like, this is never over. I win, they fucking lose. That's how the world fucking works. Little fucking kikes. They get ruled by people like me. Little fucking.
And then he goes on and drops every slur that you can imagine. Yeah. Slurs for white people. Sorry, slurs for black people. Slurs for Jewish people. Slurs for Asian people. He just, like, it's all slurs. Then my ancestors fucking enslaved those little pieces of fucking shit is the next line. I rule the fucking world. Those pieces of shit get ruled by people like me. They look up and see a face like mine looking down at them. These are all direct quotes from Richard Spencer, by the way. That's how the fucking world works. We're going to destroy this fucking town. It would appear that he is a white supremacist and an avowed one, and one who believes as well the things he says. Yeah. But I for sure, bring him on the show, you know, just for a little calm discussion to be like, so what are you actually about? I've heard other people say things about you, but maybe if you want to, you could use this as an opportunity to rebrand in any way you choose right now, because I'm not going to look it up, who you are.
Well, obviously, we'll dive a lot more into both of your backgrounds as the conversation continues, but we have Phil Labonte hanging out.
Hello, everybody. My name is Phil Labonte. I'm the lead singer of the heavy metal band All That Remains. I'm an anti-communist and a counter-revolutionary.
Right on. So,
Cool.
shall we get started with the, I guess, the first...
I'm the lead singer of a fucking metal band that believes in upholding the status quo. Yeah, we're pretty punk. Let me just say that. Yeah, rock and or roll. Am I right?
First question, which I'm not sure I completely understood, is that you said Joe Biden may be a conservative, or you said he is a conservative?
He's a conservative. There's no question. So
I love it.
All right. Well, look, what is a conservative? A conservative conserves. That's in the very name. He maintains a status quo.
Wait. So then what is a progressive?
I think liberal is actually the better word.
Yeah, but what's a progressive?
Well, I don't know. Hillary Clinton, someone who
what do progressives do?
So, I mean, when you're a Nazi, obviously the Overton window is very warped for you, right? So everything kind of just like, whoop, you know, you're on the very, very far right side of the Overton window. And so if you believe in the superiority of the white race and you have subjugated other races, that they're inferior to you, that you are the master race, all that kind of stuff, well then, yeah, everything is suddenly going to look very, very different. So suddenly Hillary Clinton, in your eyes, is a progressive. That's progressive to you. Even though Hillary Clinton is deeply, deeply racist herself, not racist enough, it would seem. Because, yeah, she's maybe going to dehumanize, say, Palestinians. She's maybe going to dehumanize Black Americans, stuff like that. But she's not going to overtly say, by the way, we should be subjugating them, as is our right as white people. She won't say that out loud, or even maybe even think that. I'm not going to go as far as tarnishing Hillary Clinton with those kind of beliefs, but Richard Spencer does. And so for him, it's just like, well, I mean, you know, if you are to compare me, if you compare a Nazi, then she seems kind of progressive in relation.
They are moving in some new type of direction that a conservative is fighting against.
Yeah, right. Okay, got it. So how is Biden not? If you just say that the conservative describes everybody who is conserving any kind of status quo, even if it's a progressive status quo, that's bizarre.
I'm conserving lasagna from last night.
That's right.
I'll go on this.
All right.
I don't know if you've heard this or not, but Joe Biden is a very old man, and he worked with segregationists back in the day. He still talks about it. He took Republican stances on things all throughout his career. He is a sort of right-wing pro-credit card company, pro-finance, pro-neocon or neocon ally person. That's who he is. He's not this left-wing maniac attempting to bring communism to the world. And it's very hard to...
The guy has open border policies, man. Like, what?
He doesn't have an open...
He's circumventing the Republicans on the border. You know, he tried to outright them. Yeah, it's like, come on, we can reach across the aisle. I can appeal to them. I know what they want. They want to dehumanize immigrants, so I'll dehumanize them. All right. Yeah, but I guess, yeah, if you're watching Tim Pool 24/7, you believe that there's just an open door policy for the United States. As soon as Joe Biden came to power, he was like, well, my first act is just to completely open the border, and hey, sirrah, whatever will be will be. Let's just see what happens. You know.
Border policy. He's actually put forward a immigration policy that was pretty draconian. Now,
like amnesty.
Hold on.
Pretty draconian, that amnesty.
Trump is also putting forward a sort of amnesty, but
he's not putting forward
hold on.
Let's get the conservative argument succinctly so that we can then
you can react to it without
right.
taking me off the. You're knocking me around. Balance.
Good for you.
Yeah. So he is a old man who is promising a sort of return to normalcy. That was his promise in 2020. That is why he won, in fact, because Trump, it's his fault in some ways. It's not his fault in others. He is associated with chaos, with insanity. He's associated with conspiracy theories, with QAnon, with J6, et cetera, et cetera. And he promised normalcy. Now, I think normalcy is impossible in our current nation. I don't think he's going to bring us all together and we're going to all just resolve our differences and find that we all agree. But in order to step towards that, he is someone who is going to discipline his base. He disciplines his base in ways that I don't agree with, in fact. I am highly critical of the bombardment and the death and destruction in Gaza right now. So is his base. I agree with Antifa on this one, as crazy as that might sound. He is going to discipline them, and he is going to maintain a kind of more reasonable, a little bit critical here, we might withhold weapons here, policy on Israel and Gaza. He's going to discipline his base. In terms of wokeness and all that kind of stuff.
Why are the Nick Fuentes and the Richard Spencers taking this position? Because from their perspective, and you have to remember, these are Nazis, right? Nazis are trying to align themselves in what, like, Spencer, for all of his like ridiculousness and, you know, white supremacist, racist bullshit, he actually tries to approach things from a strategic standpoint. Whether or not he succeeds at that is a matter for history to bestow. But the entire rise of the alt-right, he was one of the ones that was actually effective at rebranding the very idea of being a white supremacist extremist organization. Well, that's just not going to work. You know, no one likes the word Nazi. No one likes the word white supremacist. No one likes the word Ku Klux Klan. No one likes these things. These terms are very loaded. And when people hear them, they're like, oh, that's what you're about. Yeah, no, I don't want anything to do with that. What if, instead of we were branding ourselves with that, we told everyone that we were an alternative to the right? There's the right, and we were, you know, we're allies in a lot of issues, especially with our dehumanization of immigrants and stuff like that. But we're also an alternative to the right. We're the alt-right, and that we believe deeply in internet culture, memes, irony pilling people, and you know, utilizing a lot of online rage and directing that towards certain political candidates. In the case of Richard Spencer, towards Donald Trump, stuff like that. And then when we have a discussion surrounding issues, the anti-Semitic idea that you can conflate everything that Israel does with all Jewish people, they have also bought into that. They being Richard Spencer and all these extremists, Nick Fuentes as well. So for them, they see the actions of Israel as the actions of Jewish people, like globally. And so that in their mind, wins for Israel, whether they be militarily or supported by the United States, are wins for Jewish people. And in that regard, because they hate Jewish people and they want to eliminate Jewish people, that's why they position themselves in such a way. If you actually got down to brass tacks and you talked to a Nick Fuentes or a Richard Spencer behind the scenes, and you were like, so do you prefer, or sorry, do you respect the rights of Palestinians? They might tell you openly in front of a camera, yes, absolutely, right, because we need to abolish Israel or something like that. And then off camera, it'll be, no, I think those are barbaric, subhuman monsters, you know, of the highest order. I just don't want Israel to win. Yeah, but it's not that I like Palestinians. It's not that I like Muslims. It's not that I like, you know, anyone of that particular ethnicity or group or any of that. This is where I position myself.
I know it's been very profitable for people to talk about wokeness all the time, but my sense is that it peaked and is on the decline. If we define wokeness as like all kids should be trans and like, you know, replace the 4th of July with Vladimir Lenin Day, or just kind of silliness, novelty in terms of sexual manifestations and all that kind of stuff, I actually think that is on the decline. I think Hollywood is going to shock a lot of conservatives when they start going conservative with, you know, white Little Mermaids this time and traditional storytelling, for the simple reason that they want to make money.
This is
so hold on. Wokeness is
Papa Fashion is not happy with Richard Spencer right now. One was too many. It already happened. We already lost that war.
He is maintaining the system. In terms of Make America Great Again, all of that garbled talking points that Trump put forward, Biden has attempted to enact in a imperfect way. The CHIP Act, that was something that Trump actually talked about. That's something that Biden...
This is 3 hours long. I want to get into their...
concisely. He is taking on a Cold War posture vis-a-vis Russia.
Mm-hmm. He envisionment of these types of progressive values. But when Tim rightly points this out, it's paradoxical to say the conservation of the status quo is progressivism,
yes.
Right? If that's the case, then basically you're flipping the parties. You're saying that all liberals are conservatives, and then what's a conservative?
Someone changing the system.
Yeah, someone changing the system. So
yes,
you're literally reversing.
I do think, if we want to move to this topic, Republicans were not always like this. Growing up in the 80s and 90s in Dallas, Texas, Republicans wore khaki pants, blue blazers. They were a lawyer. It's the party of the rich in many ways. The party of the decent rich as well.
The decent rich.
What Trump represents is not that. Michael Moore nailed it when he said it is a resentment ideology. On that one day of the year, a homeless person has the same amount of power as a billionaire, and because they both have one vote, and they can just clock the system right in the face and just say F you all.
So does the unhoused person have the ability to lobby? Does the unhoused person have super PACs, and then super PACs within super PACs? Did they have a super PAC that doesn't go by the same name, but it's also getting money from the original organization? There's like 12 super PACs. They're not all one organization, but they are getting funding from multiple organizations. So there's that.
That is what Trumpism thrives on, is that sort of resentment.
Yes, this is the Nazi who got punched in the street.
bordering on nihilism. I don't think conservatives have any sort.
Where does the nihilism come in here? Why is it?
You want to tear it all down? I would call that nihilistic.
You kind of insert this over and over, but it doesn't seem like they want to tear it all down. It seems like they want to empty a lot of the players who are bad players. They don't want to tear the institutions down. They want to take them back. They don't want this kind of idea that Trumpism
sounds like
is based around
rebranding.
Burn it down and we'll start over again. It doesn't.
I feel a lot of Trumpism, to be honest.
It seems to be mostly based around they want to get rid of bad actors. They want to get rid of bad actors. That's what Drain the Swamp was all about.
I want to add, I think a lot of what Richard is saying about the United States had never been like a Finland is a very, very good point. This is true. The states themselves were unto themselves as effectively sovereign states.
Yeah.
Civil War changed everything. And I'm trying to pinpoint a time in the United States where there wasn't a rapid shift and change. And honestly, we have these periods. We had the Revolutionary period, which is again, there's no nation state. We're just beholden to the crown. We break free from it over this 20-year period. We then get 80 or so years of expansion into the West, new states forming new territories, which leads to the Civil War. And this transforms this weak republic, like a weak federal union of sovereign states, into a solid nation for the first time. The famous saying being, pre-Civil War, it was the United States are, and post-Civil War, the United States is.
Right.
Then you get about 60 or so years until you get this militaristic expansionism internationally with, you get the Federal Reserve and central banking, a dramatic change. And so I think it's a good point. I'm not saying, I actually still, my view would be that Trump is a stabilizing force for America in this decline in a way that restores our vision of what things need to be, how they were better before. But I do think it's interesting, the point you're making, that Biden...
It's funny how easy people, especially conservatives, buy into that too, right? All you got to do is use a slogan that you didn't even come up with. I think Reagan came up with that slogan, but you just use it, right? Make America great again. That's what I want to do. I want to restore America. And you're like, to when? To what period did you think America was at its greatest, you know? How many civil rights do you want to erode to get back to where you felt America was at its whitest, its purest?
Is an agent of the United States is a strung together hodgepodge that must be strung together at all costs.
Right.
Not that I agree with his definitions.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes. I understand that. And I think in 2016, there was a sort of another Trump. I mean, you mentioned yourself, he did all of the LGBTQ stuff and, you know, like, yes, it would be wonderful if...
he did some pandering.
If a, you know...
Yeah, well, what stuff did he do? He held up a flag that someone had brought, and then he barely could remember, like, the letters. He was like, the LGBT, I'm a strong ally, the Q... Can't forget the Q.
If it drag queens at Miss Universe,
yeah, I'm not thrilled about the pandering there, right? But there's a big distinction to be made.
What's interesting in 2015 and 2016, he was a sort of center-left type, center-liberal type figure.
Oh, we have it on 125. It actually shows you Richard Spencer's a slow talker because he sounds like he's just talking normally, and everyone else sounds like they're sped up.
He was arguably to the left on a lot of issues of Hillary Clinton. Who voted for the Iraq War.
He was a total populist who wanted to the first thing he did was try to shut down Muslims from coming into the country.
I agree with that.
He wanted to shut down the border and build them.
I agree with that. No, that was awesome. As we say, based, you know, in the alt-right here. That part was awesome. We love that, okay? But yeah, the other parts, I felt like he was a leftist by definition, just by the fact that he didn't want to continue forever wars.
Massive
he
wall.
also said...
What are you talking about?
He also said... A massive wall is a stabilizing force. He also said, we're not going to let... He support...
It's worked out swimmingly for every civilization that has attempted it and maintained it for long periods of time. Definitely.
Socialized medicine, national healthcare system in a book called The America We Deserve 10 years before he ran. He actually started his campaign at
But you mean when he was a
Crowd,
Democrat?
a Republican gay event, or as we should say, a Republican event at CPAC in 2014. He promised more or less that we would have paid family leave for our women in corporations, which I support. It would have been pro-natalist and other things. He basically offered himself as... We have the system here. He said this directly. I know how the system works. I have manipulated the system myself. I'm going to start making it work for you. There is a sort of, it's populist. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
But populism often manifests as a sort of centrism that I think Trump offered in 2016.
I don't think
that was
much centrism. When you look at tax policy, when you look at financial policy.
That's what happened.
When you look at what happens, when you look at what happens with his policies with corporations, he gives them these massive tax breaks. This was completely against the progressive ethos of, wait, you're going to give corporations tax breaks and a trickle-down style economics. You're going to build a wall on the border. You're going to put in a symbol that the United States is not open for business. You're going to move towards isolationism. That is not center left of Hillary Clinton, dude.
In a way it is.
What way?
Well, let me explain. Paul Tsongas, when he was running for president in the 90s, he said, the Cold War is over, and guess who won? Germany and Japan. So the Axis powers in the World War II. There is a strain on the Democratic Party towards a sort of isolationism and nationalism of we want to build cars here and so on. You still hear there is historically. I mean, I'd agree that there's.
Well, there isn't now.
I thought you were talking about right now.
There is now to a degree.
Where?
Union people, old-style Democrats, Joe Biden.
The unions are not trying to commercially build anything. Unions now are just going.
This is the man who did the CHIP Act.
They move parasitically.
The CHIPS Act is literally about national defense. That's the only reason that it moved through is because it can be related.
I feel this is wild because like you've got someone who's basically an avowed white supremacist on the show and directly debating with everybody because his view of the world is not as like beanie squeezed as everyone else on this panel who goes on Tim Pool's show every single day and it's just like, yeah, so Joe Biden's a radical Marxist communist. And then you're like, but he's not though. Like if you want to use words, we should actually affix some meaning to them.
To the DOD.
The American middle class was built on national defense. The American middle class that you guys love arose during the Cold War. And the degree to which it benefited from that type of system can't be underestimated.
That's true. It happened at the same time, but it's because of the post-World War II soldiers coming back. They had the GI Bill. They had tons of money stashed away. They were getting married. They were getting married very, very, very young, quickly. They were starting families.
College was socialized.
They hadn't seen a woman in 3.5 years and were fighting Nazis, so they got home. They married their chicks. They had a ton of kids, and they went right to work. It was a whole different... It wasn't because of the Cold War, but on top of that, kind of moving back to this, this idea that these center left, that Trump was center left, due to the fact that inside of the Democrat Party, trade unions want to somehow bring work back to the United. That's not how they operate. They parasitically go company to company, and they get a union, and then they just begin to rake over the coals any of the profiteering of that company.
That might be true. All I'm pointing to is a sort of strain within the Democratic Party that you actually didn't see in a more globalist economic party. But let me.
I don't see this union. I don't see this big strain.
I don't want to get caught. I don't want to get caught up on that. What happened to Trump, and this actually happened in late 2016, like December 2016, is that he brought in Mnuchin. Steve Bannon said this himself. He was like, MAGA is going to marry with the conservative movement.
You're also seeing a schism here if you don't already know it. The schism exists very profoundly between, it's easy to see, Turning Point USA and Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes, leader of the Groypers, the neo-Nazis, the far right, and obviously way more successful at what he does than, say, Richard Spencer. Obviously, Richard Spencer would love to be a Nick Fuentes, but he just doesn't have the charisma and the charm, and he's also fallen from grace so many times that at this point, more people, especially younger people, who want to get into that kind of far right shit, they're going down the Nick Fuentes road. But you can see there's a big schism between Turning Point USA and the Nick Fuentes of the world. They both might support Donald Trump over Joe Biden. They both might want a Donald Trump style Project 2025 authoritarian to take over, but they're coming at it from different angles, right? They have different desires. Like for the Spencers and the Nick Fuentes, they believe a lot more in a giant global conspiracy, and they have to defeat globalism, aka usually it's anti-Semitic. They usually combine that with a Jewish conspiracy theory where Jewish people control all the levers of power and the mechanisms globally for the entire world. And that to them is a much greater enemy and a much greater threat than, say, a lot of the problems that the conservatives traditionally are concerned with and the Donald Trumps are concerned with. And while they will agree, yes, we need to secure our borders, we need to prevent all of these, Mexican and Hezbollah gangsters from coming into the country and bringing in the fentanyl and all that kind of stuff, we also have to point out the fact that we should analyze the globalism and how we have to separate ourselves from that, where that perspective is a lot less like Turning Point USA is not 24/7, being there and being like America has to destroy, the globalist threat directly. That is our calling. We must mobilize and fight. This right now, it's like we need to mobilize and secure the borders. We need to mobilize and stop trans ideology. We need to mobilize and prevent the destruction of the nuclear family. That kind of shit. Can't believe they spoke for 3 hours.
Throwing it open. Come on in, everybody. Have a good time. It's a big party over here. We're going to put you up in hotels. We're going to give you amnesty. That is what I would expect from kind of the modern progressive status quo of let's get more in to complete this progressive agenda. And he is a challenge to that. That's the big one.
I actually don't think that Trumpism is entirely about the border.
It's not
hold on. Let me just make a point. I think it's actually about a bigger generational and demographic anxiety that conservatives feel, and they have no place to push that energy outside of the border. So it's unquestionably things have changed. Not everywhere, not where I live, not where a lot of other people live. But you don't, as they say, Tucker Carlson would say, or whatever, you don't recognize your hometown due to demographic change. And I would say also that is, and it's not just illegal immigrant Mexicans. Illegal immigrant people coming from Mexico, they'll come, they'll go, they'll set up shop here, they'll work in agriculture, they'll go home, they'll send their money home. That's a kind of transitory thing. We have legal immigration that has fundamentally changed the demographics of the country. And it's changed at the elite level before it even changed in your small town.
Yeah, that's true.
So Princeton University has a minority white.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. I mean, he starts getting into the real fashy talking points, and all of a sudden there's a lot less disagreement. Everyone's like, it is true. It does feel like I don't recognize my neighbors anymore. You know, the amount of white people in this country and the amount of English speaking people certainly has changed. Yeah. Yeah, nothing to correct here. Nothing at all. Kind of, really, really yikesy. It's he's on point now.
A student body coming in since like 2020. Your local news had a kind of like brunette woman and a black guy as the anchors like 30 years ago.
Domestic Americans see themselves
demonstrating
because
a different
of this as being under siege. They have
I get it.
to the south, laying siege to the southern states, and then the Democrat policy of pumping in 1 to 1.5 million per year.
I get it.
Yes, massive demographic.
I get it. There's a general anxiety that's in many ways unspeakable. I'm willing to talk about it seriously. Most people they don't want to. It's nasty. You're going to be called racist, etc. That anxiety gave birth to Trumpism and the wall meme.
I think
I would say that's not progressivism in any way, shape, or form.
No,
every generation goes through this, and you can actually read about it going back to antiquity. It's fascinating to read, like carved in a stone tablet. What have we lost as the next generation is taking over and they shun our values and our traditions?
Yeah.
Everybody goes through this where they remember being a kid and the fun things, the good things their parents gave to them.
Yeah.
I think the problem right now is the acceleration of loss. So, my grandpa, my parents, my friends, grandparents have said like, back when I was a kid, this is how things were. Things got different. Technology changed. The way we did things changed. Today, a good example is we talk about free speech. We're all about free speech. George Carlin went to jail for swearing, I think more than once. We had blasphemy laws back in the day.
Yeah.
So when we talk about America back in the 1800s or the late 1700s at its formation, and they said free speech was in the Constitution. Yeah, but there were blasphemy laws. It didn't matter what the laws were written down.
Good.
You would go to jail for speaking out of line with the local community.
No question.
I think what we're seeing now is social media as a major factor, as well as a massive, unfettered migration, has ripped it away way too quickly. And so I look at how things used to be pre-internet. The people on the TV.
I mean, this all comes down to, it doesn't matter what side of the fascist coin you're on. Everyone's afraid of immigrants. This is where everyone's suddenly united. Like, come on. We might not all agree on whether or not Hillary Clinton is a progressive or Donald Trump could be considered to be, or, Joe Biden is a little conservative, in relation to other presidents' policies. We might not agree on that, but we can all agree that there's demographic replacement taking place, and we don't recognize our neighbors. And not as many people speak English anymore. And that's scary. And it scares us. Even though this is a nation of immigrants built upon genocide. Yeah, like outside of indigenous people, every single family of every single person on this panel at some point immigrated to this country at one point or another. But those were the good immigrants. And now the ones coming in, they're the bad immigrants for reasons.
TV would tell you what was so, and people believed it. And this was always pushing the country in a liberal direction, a progressive direction. And I mean by the modern definition of things. Acceptance of various groups. Now, it was gay marriage. Now it's LGBTQIA2S+ or whatever. The internet emerges, and all of a sudden, real conservatives had a means to defend their culture and create cultural pockets that actually formed a barrier.
Wait. But back up for me, Tim, because I'm not really sure I agree with this take. Conservatives already had that means through AM radio. So AM radio, pre-internet, the Rush Limbaughs of the world.
When did Rush Limbaugh first come onto the scene and like AM radio got big?
90s.
Right.
Yeah. 90s.
So
this was pre-internet world.
Tim's right. Look,
that's the same time as the internet, actually.
Yeah.
People didn't have. Not only did they not really have much access to the internet, but
the emergence of the internet. So I agree. Rush Limbaugh burst onto the scene to a massive audience, much larger than the internet. Mm-hmm. It is still around the same time that we saw conservatives begin to defend their culture from a media machine that was intent on destroying it.
Yeah, but I think that the AM radio and these guys like Michael Savage and Rush Limbaugh and tons of these guys. I mean, Savage was talking about what culture, borders, language.
They have such a weird, skewed version of history because, there was certainly an observable demonstration of Americans who became distrustful of their own government, but that happened well before these periods. I mean, this happened after the Richard Nixon administration, for example, and the very obviously public scandal that Richard Nixon was involved in. And a lot lot of people suddenly questioning, well, what does this have to say about whether or not we are being told the truth through both our politicians and our media? And then you can look towards other administrations that have done the same thing, where there is oftentimes what seems like a collaboration or collusion between the mainstream media and pushing, the imperial objectives of the United States, say like, during the Bush administration, where it's all of a sudden like, yeah, it seems as if we can really point towards the fact that all these media outlets are spreading the same propaganda that the government itself is spreading, right? And yes, that would have been the end of the 90s and into the aughts around that time. But it's not as if this suddenly happened with Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh is more of an example of someone who, yes, was very successful tapping into, hey, what if I'm able to say all the most horrifyingly racist, xenophobic, anti-immigrant, anti-women statements I can make? And is there an audience for that? Because not a lot of people are willing to do this because they can't do this in other mediums. I can't do this on, the FM radio. I can't do this on cable, but I can sure as hell do it on AM radio. And then boom, it turns out, yes, there's a massive audience for someone who's willing to go in front of a microphone and be like, women are sluts, immigrants carry AIDS and they come over here to steal your jobs. Whoa, no one else is speaking like this. Yes, he's cornered a new demographic, and it turns out a lot of people already have a lot of these same, racist ideas, sexist ideas built into them, and then they're like, oh, this person's speaking for me. Finally, someone said it.
All throughout the 90s, right?
But I don't think this is countering the point that I'm making.
Yeah, it's not. Let me, in a weird way, defend the liberals once again, because I guess that's my job on this show.
No, I was hoping about just 3 hours. I won't be able to randomly find it, but there are some people who have posted clips of some highlights of this. If you're wondering whether Tim ever addresses the fact that he's sitting in a room with fascists, because literally the guy with the hat, Big Papa Fascist, and Richard Spencer, no, but this event did happen.
It's culture.
Yeah.
It's if you had 100,000 individuals that were born into this culture of like Spartan-esque warrior and scientific values, you'd probably become a spacefaring nation very quickly, as opposed to a billion people who just want to eat Cheez-Its and,
exactly. There are a billion Africans. Are they getting more productive? I mean, it's about quality and not quantity.
I'm not saying that.
I
Give him enough time, and yeah, he's going to do what Nazis do, which is Nazi shit. He's like, if you just sit there and you're like, oh, Richard Spencer, can you talk to us about how Joe Biden is in fact a conservative? Well, yeah, from my own perspective, if we look at some of the policies of Joe Biden, you might say that they are more attuned to, say, traditional conservatism than they are blah, 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 go on for a long time. But then eventually it's going to be like, oh, yeah, and so should we talk about countries in Africa? Well, I mean, there's tons of people in those countries, but those countries aren't doing that well. I mean, let's not look into the historical reasons as to why that entire continent has been, repeatedly colonized and, harvested for its minerals or and all that kind of stuff. But hey, at the end of the day, we can look at quality versus quantity, and that's certainly something we should look at when we're talking about immigration. And let's just say the amount of melanin that the immigrants will or not have.
I will
I'm
say
not
though,
saying that there's no cultural.
I think
prism.
that is. We're going to get into the race thing, but I think that's an overgeneralization.
But that's really
too,
weird because
Nairobi, for instance, actually has a tremendous technological research hub.
Uh-oh. Oh, I wanted to see more. What's Richard Spencer's response to that? Is Richard Spencer going to be like, well, yes, because white people built it there, I'm sure. Well, yeah, it's basically, yeah, exactly what you'd expect there from a Richard Spencer. It's quality over quantity. Yeah. Stop trying to rebrand Nazis. They're Nazis. There's nothing that Richard Spencer can contribute to this conversation that's not coming through the lens of, again, a white supremacist, an avowed white supremacist at that. It's not like he's a secret one where it's like, we don't really know what he believes. It's like, no, it's quite apparent what he believes. They've been very, very obvious about that.
Thank you so much for watching, everybody. We first want to give a shout out to everyone who makes this show possible. This program is produced thanks to the generous support of our Patreon supporters: Anna Loves Riley, Arian McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbar Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Peanut Butter Blondie, Political Poppy, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Bomey, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Ruby, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demmel, Travis McClinton, and Words Greenwood, as well as every other person you see on the screen right now. This show would not be possible without them. And if you want to join these wonderful people who make this entire program possible, simply go to patreon.com/the Serfs and you can unlock uncensored and bonus episodes and, help us exist.